information provided on Dr. Tom Roselle Live by Dr. Tom Roselle, D.C., interview guests, show co-hosts, or substitute hosts is not intended or implied to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. It is for general information purposes only. Information from this broadcast should not replace the appropriate consultation and examination process by a licensed physician. Always consult your own physician prior to changing.
Hey everybody, welcome to Asia's Health Livestream with yours truly, Dr. Tom Roselle, and we have another great program as we always do. I'm going to walk you through the weeds on a couple things, but having said that, I want you to understand that the concept of Asia's Health is really straight up. It's your body has the capacity to repair, restore, regenerate itself at any time, and the only thing that really gets in the way is lifestyle. What do I mean by that? That means that you're out ignoring things about what you should be actively participating in, like getting a little exercise. You catch as catch can. You're getting all kinds of garbage in your body instead of eating right things. And your mind is in a constant state of turmoil and stress instead of trying to find ways of calming it down. I go back to the days of David Carradine and Kung Fu and said, grasshopper, right, and calm the world down a little bit. Having said that, let's get into some interesting concepts about your immunological system and what it really means and what you can do about it. But I want to remind you that coming up at the Results Center for Healing, this in a couple of weeks, actually, my time frames are kind of blowing away very quickly, about 10 days from now. On the 19th, we're going to be doing an in-house program on shoulder pain, natural solutions of shoulder pain. And, if you've had problems and anyway, it just doesn't go away, it always hurts, you can't reach behind you, you can't raise your arms above, you have to get a chair or a stoop to reach up and get out of the cabinet, something that you should easily be able to reach your arms up for. We're going to show you how to fix that and not to ignore it, because when you ignore those pain patterns, which have an underlying inflammatory reaction, what happens over time is you end up with degeneration, breakdown, destruction of the joint. And said, well, it'll rust up and go away, so I'll go take a couple of aspirin. And then what happens when you do that? Well, let me tell you what happens when you do that. That NSAID, that non-steroidal anti-inflammatory that you're trying to dumb the pain down with, right, competes with something called a sulfate ion or a sulfite ion. And it goes into the joint space, so now the sulfate can't get into it, and you can't restore it, you can't fix it. So it begins to degenerate. And then pretty soon you go to the doc and you say, well, you're looking at a shoulder replacement. You're looking at having to do this, whatever it is. And so why don't we stop it before it gets there? And on the 19th, we're going to show you how to stop it. We're going to show you what you do to help yourself. We're going to show you that muscles sometimes that should be cooperating, like your biceps, and then the back of your arm, the triceps, they should, one flexes, the other one relaxes. Maybe they're doing the same thing simultaneously. They're both contracting or they're both letting go, and they shouldn't be doing. There's a neurological miscommunication that over a period of time becomes progressively more significant. So if that's the case, are we stuck with it? Or is it something that can be resolved? Well, I'm here to tell you that it can be resolved because I've treated thousands of them in way over 4 decades of treating people, from professional NFL athletes to the NBA. Just you and I walking out the street because we've been digging in our garden and we want to play the game of pick up softball or whatever it is, and we hurt ourselves, but we just ignored it. It'll rust up and go away, and it just never goes away. It's always there, and it gets progressively more irritating over a period of time. When you ignore pain, which is a signal, says to you that something's wrong with the body, it's not about dumbing down the pain. It's about finding out what the problem is. And I'm going to segue into what I really want to talk to you about today. And that's your immune system. So what does pain have to do with immunological function? A lot. And so we have to make sure that we understand that there are specific things that you need to know about. And when you don't know about them, you get yourself in trouble. So let's kind of get into that, why we can't ignore pain if we really want to stay healthy, not just because it's restrictive and it hurts and you can't do something, but because it's causing other problems neurologically in your body. So let's play with that concept just a little bit. here's the situation when it comes to the pain, or it could be shoulder pain, it could be anything. But let's start with the concept that shoulder pain, which is, the inability to raise your arm up and reach for something, is one of the most common signs of an impingement within the shoulder. What do I mean by impingement? What I'm talking about is that the shoulder itself gets locked up on its own firing mechanism, meaning that the ligaments and the muscles miscommunicate. One's supposed to relax, the other one's supposed to work. So when that occurs, what we're talking about is tendons and muscles that can get trapped, they can get pinched, they can get irritated. I showed a patient the other day. She came into the office and she was complaining that her shoulder was killing her and didn't make any difference what she was doing. I said, show me what you're doing. The physical therapist had given her some exercises, gave her some bands, and she would pull back like this. And I said, okay, let me look at that. So I gave her a band and we hooked it up on the door. And what she was doing is she was moving her shoulder. So I'm going to try to turn, maybe you can see me when I do this. When you pull back like this, you're using your shoulder muscles. But here's what she was doing. She was bent forward and pulling back, but she wasn't squeezing her shoulder blades together, and she wasn't lifting her chest up like this. You have to lift your chest up, and then you bring the bands back, and then you squeeze the shoulder blades together. That's the exercise. So meanwhile, she's making things worse, and she's tightening up muscles here because she's contracting forward, and she's only getting some firing in the lower portion of the shoulder girdle on the back. So we cleaned that up a little bit, and I said, here's what you're going to do. And lovingly we kid and say, physical therapy has a religion of 10. What does that mean? That means you're going to do everything 10 times. But sometimes the shoulder or the muscle or anything that you're exercising can only do it twice before the muscle fatigues. It gets tired. You can do it twice, but you can only do it 2 times. So you start with 2 times. There's a way of testing it. So for example, if I'm going to have you lift up like this with a couple 2-pound weights, and you go 1, 2, and I put pressure on the third one, the muscle doesn't have any strength anymore. I only know you can do 2 of them. So I'm going to tell you, go home and do 10 sets of 2 or 15 sets of 2. And then we'll reevaluate. Maybe the next time you can do 3 or 4. And then you stop and you do 10 sets of 3 or 10 sets of 4. Now you're strengthening muscle, but the posture pattern has to be specific. All right, now we're going to get into that a little bit in a different situation. I want to talk to you somewhat about your immune system today and what that really means and what's happening and why we're ignoring some of the stuff. But we're going to do it from a neurological platform. So you as an organism, right, have immune systems, and that immune system is mediated, triggered by something called your central nervous system, and allows your immune system to communicate and engage with the rest of the body. So if it can do that, you can fight infection. You can fight bacterium, you can fight fungus, you can fight viruses, you can fight. That's the way the body was designed, to permit the nervous system to direct, if you will, and regulate immune function. We're taught that, were we? So when we think, well, we just have these cells that do whatever they're going to do, and that's how we're supposed to be protected. And oh my God, I have to go do this, I have to do the other thing, like we've been instructed for the last many years. But here's the deal. If your immunological system is mediated by your nervous system, brain, spinal cord, 31 pairs of nerves, the peripheral nerves that go out, they attach to all the systems, and there's this neurochemical response, which we know to exist. If that's not working well, then your immune system cannot work properly. So now we become more susceptible to many other things that take place. That's not okay. We don't want that to happen, right? So immunologically, your nervous system is the conductor. It's the one that tells you what to do. So your immune system and the nervous system maintain this extensive interdependency, if you will, including how you move your hands and your fight flight reaction, how you protect yourself, how you repair yourself. It actually tells your lymph system, those little glands, if you will, that clear all the waste and toxins out of your system. It gets rid of them. It tells them how to work. And they do it through things called nerves, transmitters, meaning stimulating components. So neurotransmitters are things like acetylcholine and norepinephrine, norepinephrine. And we have things of that nature that, and you've heard something called substance P, right? Well, substance P is a modulator, and it increases and decreases immune activity. But if substance P isn't adequate and not working the way it's supposed to, your body, your immunological system can go in overdrive and give you the symptoms of, oh my gosh, right? So that's a whole story that we can sit here probably the next 2 hours. But I want to give you things that you can do that help yourself and make a difference. If you go into one of my favorite places to read, and that's the National Library of Medicine, NIH, in their PubMed publishing center, there's an interesting article that was originally taken from a journal called Frontiers in Immunology, and it was published, and it talked about immune response in neurological pathology, and the subtitle was Emerging Role of Central and Peripheral Immune Crosstalk. Big terminology. What does that really mean? That means that you have systems in your body that are constantly engaging in cross communication patterns to say, I need to come up a little bit, you need to go down a little bit, you need to go up a little bit, I need to go down a little bit, and then back and forth. So when you deal with this, you all of a sudden see what it's talking about. It's called neuroinflammation. And what that really means is that the body is kicking in the inflammatory response, and inflammation is a good thing if it's not protracted over a long period of time. It's there to start the repair process and upregulate your protection, your peripheral immune cells that are triggered by the neurological system. A lot of stuff, but here's what it comes down to, real simple. If you are ignoring the body's signaling, you can't function the way that it was designed to function, then your body's not going to be able to protect you. It's either going to be hyper irritated or it's going to go to sleep, and it can't do anything no matter what takes place, and you get beat up just as quickly one side or the other. So how do we fix that? How do we do that? How do we get our immune system to pay attention? One is don't ignore pain. Pain's not there just to be dumbed down by taking one of the NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, or something even much more significant than that. If you ignore pain, you have an inflammatory response that continues and causes all kinds of things from scar tissue. Once that inflammation gets high, it's going to start affecting other organ systems as well. Everything from your heart to your kidneys, to your pancreas, to your liver, and so forth, because it doesn't isolate itself necessarily in one area. If you hurt your shoulder, then you have an inflammatory response at that moment. If that pain continues, that inflammatory response is ongoing, what do you have to do about it? You got to find out the source of the pain, not just knock the pain out so you don't perceive it. And that's what most medications do. If you have a functional irritation, meaning that something happened to the mechanics of the shoulder, of the hip, of the knee, of the neck, whatever it is, and so you do what's called a life compensation movement. That means if it hurts when I do this and I raise my arm and pick something up, I just won't move it like that anymore. I'll figure out a different way to do it. No, that's not the way it's supposed to be done. You have to find out the connections between one part of the body and the other. So if you have a nerve in your neck down the lower portion that is irritated, in my world, we call it a spinal subluxation. In the osteopathic world, they call it a spinal lesion. Now that nerve goes into the shoulder, into the arm, into the hands, and so forth. You can do anything you want to that shoulder. You can do anything you want to your hands. You can do any of that. But until you figure out what's going on here and fix that, it's never going away. So I would encourage you to not ignore the onslaughts, the slings and arrows, if you will, of dysfunction, because you're just going to get yourself into deeper and deeper problems. But going back to that article, and it's really, if you did nothing more than go in and read the abstracts on this thing, and real simple, right? It says neuroinflammation, nerve inflammation is a key component of neurological disorders and is an important therapeutic target. That means that you got to find out what it really is about and fix that, not just the symptom that it's generating that's driving you crazy, right? So we could have a sore shoulder, but that sore shoulder may be coming from your neck. That sore shoulder may be coming from other muscles somehow having lost their memory. Now, this article goes on and talks about inflammatory reactions as it relates to some serious conditions like MS and multiple sclerosis. We've seen a ton of those over the years. There is a lot of evidence that says that MS in the literature, and going into NIH and reading PubMed and so forth, that MS has a lot to do with a couple of things. One can be a viral load of some sort going back from years gone by. It's finger pointing towards a herpetic type of viral patterns. Interesting what they're coming up with. And, a lot of it also may be the exposures to what we call adjuvants. And those are the stabilizers in different types of drugs, but particularly vaccines and so forth. That's your aluminum and mercury and the like. So that's where a lot of research is going right now. And they also talk about the inflammatory response that we ignore, the pain that we ignore, as it's related to things like even Alzheimer's and ALS and things along that nature. The more that I read and I dig into Frontier and the Townsend Letter and PubMed and New England Journal of Medicine and British Journal of Medicine and so forth, there's a lot of ongoing conversation, research, if you will, that is showing that these inflammatory processes can come about because of trauma, injury. It can come across because of biochemical insult, meaning we've been exposed to something someplace, somewhere along the way. It can become to an ongoing stress pattern where we're constantly, under stress, internalizing the stress, making things worse. Why is that a problem? It's a problem because of one thing, that internalization increases the inflammatory response, increases the acid, the breakdown within the body, and pretty soon plaquing and other things take place, destruction of tissue. The pathological end of it begins to show up. So what's a person to do? One, don't ignore pain. Go see somebody like me that knows their stuff in functional medicine protocols, understands the neural connection, can really look at your body the way it's supposed to be looked at. See if you have spinal problems and structural problems that need to be addressed that you've been putting up with for a long period of time. Sometimes it comes from the feet. Last night I adjusted one of my granddaughters, and she's an athlete. She's an amazing, amazing athlete. And she said, "Grandpa, my foot keeps weakening on me." And she's, when I talk about top level athlete, she really is. And so what I found was at the bottom of her foot, the upper portion, the metatarsal portion of her foot was dropping down every time she stood on it. If you looked at her lying down, she's got a beautiful arch. But as soon as she stood on it, it dropped. And all I did was put a little piece of tape in here and lift it up, and everything started firing again. So we have to try to find the source of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to get her some metatarsal supports. So put it in there. It'll heal over a period of time. Nothing that's going to shift, and alter that she's going to have to stay with it forever. Here's this young girl that, I don't want to have an orthotic in there for forever and a day. But that changed it. But you have to have somebody who understands neurobiomechanics. If you understand the neurological impact that one part of the body has to another, now you can get resolution. You can fix something. The other piece, remember I talked about the shoulders and what should take place and how you should exercise. If you don't do the exercise properly, you're adding to the injury. So make sure that you, even if you can't do 5, but you only do 2 the right way. Make sure your chest comes up if it's shoulders. Make sure that you pull back and you squeeze your shoulder blades together, hesitate with them, and then relax them and let them go. Now you're firing the muscles that are going to support those shoulders and take the strain off of it. Muscles react in pairs and sometimes multiple pairs. And if one pair is not firing, it puts the burden on other areas, but you have to be able to test it. For example, there's a muscle that does this in the body, pushing straight up. It's called the coracobrachialis muscle. And it reacts to, of all things, the biceps. So a patient comes in and says, it hurts. I can't lift it up. And so I test the biceps by pushing this way. And then I immediately test the coracobrachialis muscle. They should both hold, meaning they should fire. If you stress one by testing it and you go back to the other one and now that one weakens, that tells you that one is overworking and you have to tone it down. And you go into the middle of the muscle and you relax it and it drops down. Okay. So you have to have somebody who gets that, who really understands that. If you're in the Washington, D.C. area, join us on the 19th, 6 p.m. at the Roselle Center for Healing. Love to have you as our guest. And we'll have a great time, and we'll show you some of these things, and we may fix a shoulder or two while you're there, or a hip or a foot or whatever. At least we're going to show you what's going on. I think you're going to find it extraordinarily interesting of how the body is really designed and how the mechanism comes together. But it's really important that it's done properly. Now, immunologically, you need a lot of support on a lot of different things. We encourage our patients to have baselines of vitamin D and vitamin C, and making sure that their body's not polluted and not toxic. If you go into drtomroselle.com and you go down to go to the Ageless Health store, there's several things there for immunological support. If you have a viral pattern, there's an oleander 4X product there. If you there's also an immunological bushel basket in there. Go in and take a look at those things. And if they're there, it's because we've blessed them and we've said these things work really, really well. And I encourage you to take advantage of things that are easy. When you go shopping, make sure that you buy good foods. I was laughing the other day, and everybody's freaking out because they can't get eggs. And they said, well, it's, everybody's finger pointing, try to blame everybody. That's the political spin. I don't care about politics. I care about what really is true about stuff. So what is true? Here's what's true. You had something called, bird flu, right? What did they do? They killed all the chickens. That's why you can't get the eggs. And they forgot to save some of the eggs because the virus doesn't go into the egg. And so now they've got to go slow and start regenerating and growing new chickens and so forth. That's why you can't get eggs easily right now. They're still out there, but you're going to pay a lot more for them for a while. So make sure you get it done. By the way, my book is still available. Ageless Health. Health is a do-it-yourself program. Pick it up. It gives you the concepts of everything that we do and why we do what we do and why I tell you to do certain things in a certain way. You've got to look at the structural, chemical, emotional platform. If you do that and you really take care, you can get rid of half the stuff that's bugging you, but you got to take control of it. You have to understand what the mechanisms are and what's taking place. Read. Remember, I've said repetitively, you hear me on the radio program, WMAL 105.9 FM. I will constantly say what I want to do, and my job is to provoke you, is to stir your hornet's nest up. So you go out and you do your own research. I don't want you to believe anybody, including me. I want to get your thought process going. So you do your homework and you take control. You become the captain of your own ship. You get to choose in your healthcare. You decide whether something is right or something is wrong for you. Not somebody else, but you, based on information, knowledge, and so forth. So you got to read and get as much as you can around you. Read a little bit here. You know how I start my day every day? And I tell everybody this. I'm usually up by 5:30, 4 to 6. And I go downstairs in my office and, my creator and I have a little conversation, and we know how I'm going to start the day and what I'm going to be doing with it. And then I meditate for, probably another 20 minutes. And then I stretch and I do some things like that. And then I wander and I get a big glass of water and I start reading. And then on a good day, if I'm really rambunctious, I'll do more than just stretching and the normal Tai Chi and things like that. But I'll go out and I'll really exercise or do something of that nature. So you can do this too, and you do it based on the condition that you're in at the time. But I would encourage you to focus on the important things. Focus on the quality that you surround yourself, both from a biochemical platform, an emotional platform, and make sure that you get movement. Life is motion. Without motion, your life is going to end pretty quickly. So you have to make sure you put those in, but in a good way. So develop your habits. Get them so they're supportive to you. We're going to come back with a lot more over the weeks, and we're going to start putting together our old program, the Asia's Health program. Many of you came 2 years ago, and we stopped just prior to COVID because of everything that was going on. And we're trying to figure out, are we going to do this again for you? Yes, we're going to do it for you. Having said that, you have an amazing day, and don't forget, your health is in your hands. Take care of yourself. See you later. I love you all.